Welcome to our deep dive, everybody.
Excited to be here.
Today, we're going to try to understand iGen.
Right.
That's the generation born between 1995 and 2012.
Yeah, 95 to 2012.
They're kind of shaping the future of, well, everything, right?
Mm.
I mean, it's like how we work, how we communicate.
Definitely. Yeah.
How we connect with each other. So
Huge.
it feels really important to understand them,
Yeah, absolutely.
They're super interesting because, on the one hand, they're known for being like really digitally savvy.
Right.
But then on the other hand, you've got these record levels of loneliness.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big paradoxes with iGen.
Yeah.
Is they're known for being, more tolerant, more inclusive than previous generations,
Mm-hmm.
but then they're less likely to engage in traditional activism or those sorts of things.
Yeah.
It's like they're rewriting the rules of how we connect, how we engage with the world.
Yeah, totally.
It's fascinating.
So to tackle this, we've got a ton of research to go through.
Yeah, we do.
Like we've got studies, we've got surveys,
Mm-hmm.
we've even got some firsthand accounts of people, who are part of this generation.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission today is to kind of go beyond, those headlines, right?
That's right.
The ones
Yeah.
that say, oh, iGen is lazy or iGen is entitled.
Exactly.
We want to really figure out what makes this generation tick.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really important point because it's easy to fall into these stereotypes
Totally.
and these kind of simplistic explanations.
Yeah.
But iGen isn't a monolith, right?
No.
You've got all this diversity within the generation,
Mm-hmm.
and so while technology is obviously a huge influence, we have to think about all these other factors,
Yeah.
like the economic shifts that have been happening,
Yeah.
changing social values.
Mm-hmm.
All of that plays into shaping who they are.
Okay, well, let's unpack all of this.
Let's do it.
I mean, I don't think we can talk about iGen without talking about smartphones.
Right.
The elephant in the room.
Yep.
Or maybe it's the smartphone in the pocket.
Smartphone in the pocket. There you go.
They're the first generation to grow up with this constant internet access.
Mm-hmm.
And did you know that iGen teens check their phones an average of 80 times a day?
80 times a day.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing.
It's crazy.
When you think about the long-term impact of that.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Their social skills,
Yeah.
their attention spans,
Yeah.
even just how they experience reality itself.
Totally.
It's all being shaped by this digital world.
Okay, so are we saying that smartphones are the root of all evil when it comes to iGen?
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
I mean, it's more complex than that, right?
Okay.
I mean, you got to remember, this is also the generation that grew up, during the Great Recession,
Right.
political polarization, this growing awareness of all these social injustices.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So all of those things are playing a role too.
Okay, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
But there's another misconception out there about iGen,
Okay.
and it's that they're constantly clashing with their parents.
Oh yeah, the rebellious teenager stereotype.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But the research, it seems to tell a different story.
It does. It does.
It looks like they're actually less rebellious,
Mhm.
less likely to do risky things.
Less risk-taking,
Yeah.
Drinking, driving under the influence,
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
They seem more cautious
They do.
than previous generations.
And I think that's really interesting because
Yeah.
they seem to crave stability,
Yeah.
security,
Hmm.
which might be a reaction to just how uncertain the world feels right now.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because you've got this craving for security. But then they're growing up in such a turbulent time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, what about this idea that they're online all the time because it makes them happy?
Well, see, that's another myth.
Okay.
The research actually shows that there's a pretty strong correlation between, more screen time
Yeah.
and less happiness.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And, rates of depression and anxiety, even suicide.
Oh, wow.
They're rising in this generation.
That's heavy.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. And social media definitely plays a role in that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
cyberbullying, this constant need for validation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it takes a toll.
That's really sobering.
Yeah.
It kind of makes you wonder if there's a connection, right,
Yeah.
between that desire for security
Right.
and then this rise in mental health struggles.
It's possible, yeah.
Okay, here's another myth that we hear a lot.
Okay.
That iGen is all about like entrepreneurship and the hustle lifestyle.
Right, right.
You know, they want to be their own boss, reject those traditional work structures.
Yeah, that's a common one.
Right.
But is it true?
Well, it's interesting because while they might not, view work as their entire identity in the same way that maybe some older generations do.
Right.
They're actually more pragmatic about employment than millennials were at their age.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, so they're really concerned about financial security.
Okay.
Which makes sense, right? I mean, they saw what happened with the recession. They see how student debt can pile up.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they're more drawn to stability.
Okay.
They're less likely to take those big risks associated with starting their own business.
So maybe they value flexibility and work-life balance, but not necessarily in like that gig economy way.
Right.
That we hear so much about.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, what about this idea that iGen prioritizes, like, meaning in life?
Over financial success.
I mean, it's not quite that simple, right? I think they do value purpose.
Yeah.
But that concern about their economic prospects, I mean, that runs deep.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they're juggling these two things, right? Like,
yeah,
they want a fulfilling life, but they also have these very real anxieties about student debt.
Totally.
The job market.
Yeah.
The cost of living.
All that stuff.
All of that, yeah.
Okay, so it's less about, like, rejecting financial success
Right.
and more about kind of needing both.
Yeah, I think so.
They want to be financially secure, but they also want to find work that feels meaningful.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Okay, one final myth to bust.
Okay.
iGen is all liberal.
Yes, that's a big one.
Right.
And I think this is where nuanced understanding is really important.
Yeah.
Because yes, a lot of iGen individuals lean liberal, but there's also this growing polarization within the generation.
Oh.
You've got a significant conservative contingent, and their political views often, clash with those of older generations.
So slapping a label on them doesn't really work.
It doesn't capture the full picture.
Okay, so to really get them, we need to dig deeper.
We do.
And that brings us to the work of researcher Jean Twenge.
Right.
She's identified 10 defining trends of iGen.
10 trends.
And these trends, I think, offer a really good framework for understanding this generation.
Absolutely.
Let's dive into them.
Let's do it.
The first one is in no hurry.
In no hurry.
What's that about?
So this refers to the fact that iGen is kind of delaying these traditional markers of adulthood. So they're getting their driver's licenses later, they're dating less,
Okay.
and they're slower to enter the workforce.
So some people might look at this in no hurry trend and say, oh, that's just laziness.
Right. But it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
I think some experts believe that it's a combination of factors.
Okay.
You've got the increased pressure to succeed academically. And then you also have, this desire for an extended adolescence.
Okay.
Because, the world feels pretty uncertain right now.
Yeah, totally.
And so it's like they're taking their time to figure things out.
Yeah.
Explore their options.
Makes sense. Like they're pausing before they leap into adulthood.
Exactly.
Okay. Trend number 2, internet.
Internet.
I feel like that one's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So what does it really mean?
Right, because we know they spend a ton of time online.
Yeah.
But I think the real question is, like, how is that impacting other aspects of their lives?
Yeah.
What are the trade-offs?
Right.
What are they not doing because they're on their phones?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so it's not just about like the raw hours online. It's about what those hours are replacing.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, and that leads us to trend number 3, which is in person, no more.
In person, no more.
So this generation, it seems like they prefer to communicate online.
They do.
And they're less comfortable with those face-to-face interactions.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And that feels like it has huge implications for their social development, right?
Absolutely.
Like how do you how do you learn to, read social cues?
Right.
How do you learn to navigate conflict or build those deep relationships if you're always interacting through a screen?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And it's something that researchers are still really trying to wrap their heads around.
Okay, trend number 4 is insecure.
Insecure.
And we kind of touched on this earlier with those record levels of anxiety and depression and loneliness.
Right.
But why is this happening?
Well, this is one of the most I think concerning trends.
Yeah.
And it's multifaceted, right? I mean, social media plays a role.
Yeah.
But it's not the only thing, right?
Right.
You got to think about it. They're constantly bombarded with these curated images.
Yeah.
There's this pressure to present this perfect online persona.
Totally.
And that's just a recipe for comparison.
Yeah.
And self-doubt.
It's like they're living under a microscope, constantly being judged.
Yeah.
Okay, trend number 5, irreligious.
Irreligious.
Right.
What's going on there?
So iGen is less religious than any generation before them.
Okay.
They're less likely to identify with organized religion or to attend religious services.
So it's not necessarily that they don't believe in anything.
Right. They might be finding meaning and spirituality in other places outside of those traditional religious structures.
Yeah. It's more about questioning institutions and seeking out these individualized paths.
Okay. Trend number 6, insulated but not intrinsic.
Insulated but not intrinsic.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It is.
So think about the world that they grew up in, right?
Okay.
Post 9/11, school shootings, economic instability.
Yeah.
So for them, safety and security are paramount.
Okay.
But that can create this sense of detachment from the broader community. And so they're less likely to participate in traditional forms of activism or of volunteerism.
So it's not that they don't care about the world.
Right.
It's that they're navigating this tension between wanting to be safe and wanting to be engaged.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay. Trend number 7 is income insecurity.
Income insecurity.
Income insecurity.
And this one, I mean, it makes sense. It does, yeah.
Right. They've seen recessions. They've seen the student debt burdens, the challenging job market.
It's all very real for them.
Yeah.
And so that shapes their work ethic.
Okay.
It makes them more pragmatic, less likely to take risks with their careers.
So they're risk averse because they've seen how risky things can be.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, trend number 8 is indefinite.
Indefinite.
Which refers to their kind of fluid attitudes towards gender and relationships and family formation.
Exactly, yeah.
So it seems like they're less likely to just kind of follow those traditional social scripts.
Right.
And they're more open to diverse lifestyles and identities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this feels connected to their emphasis on inclusivity.
Yeah.
But isn't there a risk that this constant focus on safety and security that it could stifle their creativity or their willingness to take risks?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And that's a conversation that I think we should dig into a little bit more.
Okay.
As we continue to explore these trends.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Between security and exploration, between individuality and collective action.
Okay.
It's a complex equation.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 more trends to go.
All right.
Number 9 is inclusive.
Inclusive, yeah.
So this is maybe one of the most hopeful trends.
I think so too.
Yeah. So they really value tolerance, equality, and they're open to discussing social issues.
They are.
They're more likely to embrace diversity and challenge discrimination based on race or gender or sexual orientation, all that. It's like they're trying to push for a more just and equitable world.
Yeah. They're not afraid to call out injustice and demand change.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we see that in movements like, Black Lives Matter.
Right.
The fight for LGBTQ plus rights.
Yeah, totally.
So, they're using their voices and they're demanding to be heard.
Okay, last trend, number 10. Independent.
Independent.
What's the story there?
So they're forming their own political views.
Okay.
Often diverging from their parents' beliefs.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they're getting information from a wider variety of sources these days, and they're less likely to just blindly follow, the ideologies of previous generations.
So they're independent thinkers.
They are
questioning the world around them and forming their own conclusions.
Yeah, and I think that's a powerful force for change.
It is.
Yeah.
But with all these trends and all these contradictions, where does this leave iGen as they enter adulthood?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that I think we'll explore further as we continue this deep dive.
Okay.
But one thing's for sure. Understanding iGen is key to understanding the future.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here in this first part of our deep dive into iGen.
We have.
We've explored the impact of technology. We busted some common myths, and we outlined those 10 defining trends that are shaping this generation.
Absolutely.
In the next part, we're going to dig deeper into those trends.
We are.
And we're going to discuss the implications for iGen's future and really the future of our society as a whole.
Yeah, it's an exciting conversation to be having.
It is.
Yeah. So we've laid out these 10 trends that are shaping iGen.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean, really?
Right.
The significance for them and for the rest of us.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
It is.
I think for me, what's really interesting is this kind of push and pull between iGen's desire for security,
right,
and then their comfort with challenging norms. Yeah. Like they're cautious, but they're also pushing for a more inclusive and equitable world.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's an interesting mix.
It is. It is.
And it seems like that tension kind of creates both challenges and opportunities.
It does.
So on the one hand, you could say that their focus on safety and security might make them less likely to start businesses or engage in traditional activism, right?
Yeah, that's a possibility.
But then on the other hand, their values around inclusivity and tolerance, that could drive some really significant social progress.
It could, absolutely.
I mean, they're not afraid to call out injustice and demand change.
No.
And we see that in movements like Black Lives Matter.
Absolutely.
The fight for LGBTQ plus rights. Right. Like they're out there.
They are.
And their comfort with technology, with online communication, that could be a really powerful tool. For organizing, for mobilizing.
Yeah, I mean, they're digital natives. They understand how to use social media for social change.
Yeah, it's not just like slacktivism.
Right.
Liking a post and calling it a day.
No, it's more than that.
They're using these platforms to raise awareness, to build communities, to even pressure institutions to take action.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind, right? Yeah. Because it's easy to dismiss it as, they're just on their phones all the time.
Right.
But they're actually using those phones to make a difference.
Okay, and let's not forget, they're also entering the workforce now.
They are, yeah.
Right. And their values and their expectations, I mean, that's going to reshape the workplace.
It is.
Like they're looking for more than just a paycheck. They want purpose.
They want meaning.
Yeah.
They want a work culture that aligns with their values.
So companies that want to attract and retain, top talent from this generation, they need to be paying attention.
They do.
It's not like, the old days where you just expect employees to sacrifice their personal lives for the sake of their careers.
It's a different world now.
Yeah.
And iGen is demanding a better work-life balance.
Yeah, and they're willing to walk away.
They are
from jobs that don't offer it.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're not as tied to those traditional career paths or the idea of like climbing the corporate ladder.
Yeah.
They're more open to exploring, alternative options.
Yeah, like freelancing, the gig economy.
Yeah.
Things that offer them more autonomy, more flexibility.
Okay, you mentioned earlier that their focus on security could potentially stifle their creativity, their risk taking. So how do we encourage them to embrace those qualities?
Yeah.
While also acknowledging that they need stability.
That's a great question, and I think it requires a delicate balance, right? It's not about, pushing them into situations that make them uncomfortable.
Right.
But it's about creating environments where they feel supported.
Yeah.
To take risks.
Okay.
Calculated risks.
Right.
So, think about like mentorship programs that pair them with experienced entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Or, opportunities for them to test out their ideas.
Yeah.
In low stakes environments.
Right. So it's like creating a safety net where failure isn't seen as a setback.
Right. It's a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
It's part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's also about, highlighting the stories of successful individuals who took unconventional paths.
Right.
Who embraced risk and innovation.
Totally.
Because role models are powerful.
They are.
Especially for a generation that's trying to figure out, like, what does success even mean?
Okay, so we've got this generation that's digitally savvy. They're socially conscious. They're demanding change.
Yeah.
But they're also facing these really serious challenges.
Yeah. Like
unprecedented levels of anxiety and depression.
Right.
So how do we support them in navigating these challenges?
That's a critical question, and I don't think there's any easy answers.
Right.
But I think it starts with addressing the root causes of their distress, right? Yeah. So that means looking at the role of technology, social media, the pressures that they face in this hyper-competitive world.
So are we saying we need to like take away their smartphones?
No, I don't think it's about that.
Okay.
I don't think it's about banning social media.
Okay.
It's about finding a healthy balance.
Right.
And equipping them with the tools.
Yeah.
To navigate the digital landscape.
Okay.
So we need to teach them digital literacy skills.
Yeah.
How to critically evaluate information, how to manage their online presence.
Yeah.
How to protect their privacy.
It's about empowering them.
Exactly.
To use technology in a way that actually enhances their lives
rather
than detracts from it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what about the role of parents and educators?
Yeah.
Other adults in their lives. What can they do?
Well, I think they play a vital role in creating supportive environments where young people feel safe to express themselves, to struggle, to seek help when they need it.
Totally.
And so, we need to listen to their concerns, validate their experiences, offer guidance without judgment.
It's about building trust.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Open communication. So that they don't feel like they have to face these challenges alone.
And what about addressing the systemic issues that contribute to their distress? Like economic inequality or climate change?
I mean, that's crucial, right? We can't just focus on these individual solutions.
Right.
We need to be advocating for policy and systems that create a more just and equitable society.
Right.
A society that prioritizes well-being over profit.
Yeah.
Sustainability over consumption.
Yeah.
Connection over isolation.
So it's not just about helping iGen like cope with the world as it is. It's about working to create a better world.
Exactly.
For them to inherit.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get caught up in the challenges.
Right.
But we also need to be thinking about like what kind of world are we leaving them?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the opportunities that iGen presents.
Yeah.
But what about their impact on society as a whole?
Right.
Like are we starting to see their values, their priorities kind of shift the cultural landscape?
I think we are.
You do?
Yeah, and it's fascinating to watch.
Okay.
Their emphasis on inclusivity and tolerance. It's challenging a lot of traditional norms.
Okay.
And pushing for greater acceptance of diversity in all its forms. And we're seeing this reflected in everything, right?
Yeah.
From the media they consume to the brands they support.
So they're not just like passively accepting the world as it is.
No, they're not.
They're actively shaping it.
Yeah.
To align with their values.
Exactly.
And their comfort with technology. I mean, that's also changing how we live.
Right.
How we work. Yeah. How we interact with each other.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're driving innovation in fields like AI, virtual reality, sustainable technology, and so.
And even though their entrepreneurial spirit might be, a little less pronounced than previous generations, it's still there.
Okay.
It's just finding expression in new and creative ways.
So they're finding ways to merge their passions with their careers, often kind of blurring those lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
Between work and life.
Right, because for them, it's not about like compartmentalizing those things. It's about integrating them.
Yeah, and their focus on purpose and meaning, that's inspiring a lot of people to seek out careers that have a positive impact on the world.
Yeah, they're not afraid to ask, like, what's the point?
Right.
They want work that aligns with their values, that challenges them intellectually, that contributes to something larger than themselves.
It's not just about like making a living. It's about making a difference.
Exactly.
And their digital fluency.
Yeah.
I mean, that's giving them the tools.
It is.
To connect with like-minded individuals, to build communities, to create change on a global scale.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes them so exciting.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time to be witnessing the emergence of this generation.
Yeah.
They're facing these unprecedented challenges.
They are.
But they're also bringing these fresh perspectives, innovative ideas, a determination to create a better future.
Okay, so it's clear that iGen is a generation that's going to leave its mark on the world.
Oh, absolutely.
But how exactly that mark will be shaped, I mean, that's still unfolding.
Yeah, the story's still being written.
Exactly. We've talked about all these challenges and opportunities iGen faces, this digital dependence, their push for inclusivity.
Yeah.
But I keep coming back to this question of how they actually experience reality. Yeah. I mean, growing up immersed in this digital world.
Right.
That's got to have some pretty profound effects.
It does.
On how they see things. Right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a really fascinating area of research.
Yeah.
We know that iGen's relationship with technology it's unlike anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah.
For them, it's not just a tool.
Yeah.
It's an extension of themselves.
Right.
It's a way of being in the world.
So how does that shape their sense of identity?
Yeah.
Their relationship, their understanding of the world around them?
Well, for one thing, it really blurs the lines between the virtual and the real.
Okay.
Social interactions.
Yeah.
They happen online as much as they do in person.
Yeah.
Friendships are cultivated through social media.
Right.
Even romantic relationships often begin and are maintained online.
It's like they're experiencing life itself through this digital lens.
Yeah, it's not just communicating through it.
Yeah.
It's like how they experience reality.
Exactly. And that kind of makes me wonder what happens to their sense of self then?
Right.
When so much of their identity is constructed and performed online.
That's a huge question.
Yeah.
And I think it makes them more vulnerable to things like social comparison, the need for validation, FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Right. Because it's like you said, it's all these curated images. There's this pressure to present this perfect online persona.
And it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're constantly being bombarded with these images of how you should be, it makes it really hard to develop a strong sense of self-worth, authenticity.
And what about the impact on their relationships?
Yeah.
I mean, can you really truly connect with someone when so many of your interactions are filtered through a screen?
That's a valid concern, and I think it really gets at the heart of what it means to be human.
Yeah.
Right? Like building meaningful relationships requires vulnerability, empathy, the ability to navigate conflict in a healthy way.
Totally.
And those are skills that are honed through face-to-face interaction.
Yeah.
By reading body language, emotional cues, by experiencing the full range of human emotions.
Right.
And you don't get that through a screen.
You don't, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not the technology's bad.
Right.
But it's about recognizing that it has limitations.
It does.
Right.
Yeah.
And making sure that it doesn't replace those essential human connections.
Exactly.
So how do we help iGen find that balance?
I think of it as a balancing act, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's about helping them develop the skills, the resilience they need to thrive in both the digital world and the real world.
And so part of that is encouraging them to do things that involve face-to-face interaction.
Right.
Right. That promote creativity and self-expression.
Yeah.
That get them out in nature, connected to their communities.
It's about nurturing. Their whole selves, their minds, their bodies, their spirits, so that they can navigate this complex digital age with wisdom and compassion.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into iGen, I'm wondering, knowing what we know now about this generation,
right?
What can we do to support them?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is.
And I don't think there's any easy answers.
Yeah.
But I do think it starts with understanding their challenges, their fears, their hopes, their dreams.
Yeah.
And then using that understanding to create spaces where they feel seen, heard, valued.
Spaces where they can just be themselves.
Exactly.
Without judgment, without pressure to conform. Spaces where they can explore and experiment, discover their own unique path.
And it's about empowering them to use their voices.
Yeah.
Their creativity, their digital fluency. Yeah. To make a positive impact on the world.
They've got so much to offer.
They do.
It's incredible.
It's really inspiring.
It is. Yeah. So it's our responsibility to believe in them, to support them, to champion their efforts, and to learn from their insights.
Absolutely.
Because ultimately, their future is our future.
It is.
Well, that's our deep dive into iGen.
That was great.
I hope you found it as fascinating and insightful as we did.
I did.
This generation is full of contradictions. They're facing unique challenges, but they're also just brimming with potential.
They are.
And it's up to all of us to help them navigate these complexities of the digital age. Yeah. And to create a world where they can truly thrive.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us.